All right, I'll say good day to you this day of your time. Today's transmission is Reincarnation, a deeper explanation. Now, you will be shown a chart that has two different representations of the concept of reincarnation upon it. The top image represents the actual mechanism of simultaneous multiple incarnations happening all at once. The lower portion of the graphic will detail the idea of how you experience the concept linearly. In other words, why you actually think it is reincarnation, with the same soul having lifetime after lifetime after lifetime in linear order. As you can see from the top portion of the graphic, the idea is that the oversoul extends itself into different souls represented by the different colors, so that you know they are different souls, and each of those different souls creates its own higher mind and physical mind, which is represented in the physical realm down below by the different colored boxes which represent the different persons that you all consider yourselves to be, individuals that are independent of one another. But what you can see by the black arrows between the squares is that this energy connection that exists, these cross connections that exist between all of the physical personalities that are going on simultaneously, allows you to extract information, experience, guidance, what have you, like a giant cosmic internet, constantly exchanging information, plugging and unplugging from whatever individuals you need to in order to extract the information that guides you in life. But you can see from the top mechanism, the actual mechanism, that it's all happening at the same time. It all exists all at once. But now when you impose the idea of linear space-time on the concept and allow yourself to perceive reality a moment at a time, which, as we have said, is actually a perception of the same moment, but from different points of view that you interpret as different moments linearly, one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. What happens then, from your perspective, is that the space-time reality, the space-time perspective, or what could be called the space-time lens, or space-time prism, or space-time filter that you impose upon your consciousness, just like a prism bends light, the space-time filter or lens bends the idea of how the interconnections exist between different individuals, so that it no longer exists simultaneously or is perceived to exist simultaneously. It is now bent upwards to make it seem as if the same soul, that is an extension of the oversoul, is experiencing over and over and over again an incarnation in linear terms, one after the other. You can now see that the black arrow in the chart below is bent upwards to go back into the soul level, so that it appears as if the same soul is having different physical incarnations, one after the other. But the mechanical truth is the graphic up above, without the idea of the bending of the space-time reality. So you can see that just because the space-time lens makes it appear as if the same soul is having incarnation after incarnation, the truth is these are different souls, different extensions of the oversoul, each of which is having its own physical experience that's connected to every other physical experience through those horizontal little black energy arrows. But again, because those arrows get distorted by the space-time lens, you perceive it in a linear fashion. Knowing that it's actually all happening at the same time, and knowing that the idea of reincarnation is an illusion, can help you understand how to live more in the moment, how to plug in and unplug to the other entities, the other physical beings that you may need to extract information and experience from, to aid and assist you and guide you in this particular life, as they may be doing with you as well to guide them in their lives. And you can understand that all beings exist simultaneously. All things do. So if you can allow yourself to begin to see the illusion, the distortion, in a sense, that is created by the physical space-time lens, then you can begin to operate in a more immediate, more present way, living in the moment, knowing that you can make whatever connections you need to make, knowing that you are making whatever connections you need to make, plugging and unplugging in a dynamic way. It's not a static thing. A life that you feel you're connecting to now may not necessarily be the life that you will connect to in the years to come, or you may keep recreating that connection if you feel it is of benefit to you. But this is why. This is the explanation for why. You have heard many people say, oh, I used to be Cleopatra. I used to be Julius Caesar in one of my incarnations. That's the perspective of the distortion caused by the space-time lens. But if you understand the simultaneity of everything, as represented by the upper portion of the graphic, you can realize, of course, any being can connect to any other being. And that's why you can have 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people all saying, I used to be Cleopatra. Because it's not that they actually were Cleopatra, because Cleopatra exists exactly at the same time you do. But 1,000 people can make an energy connection to Cleopatra in the present, and thus download information that may, through the distortion of the physical space-time lens, make it seem as if that was you, because you're assuming that the same soul is having these incarnations over and over and over again. So this explains the idea of how a multitude of people can connect to the same individual and download whatever information they need from that individual, and understand that it's not that it was your past life, but that it is another person existing at the same time that has their own life, but you get to extract whatever information from their experience of life that you need, while they can do the same to you. Who knows how many connections Cleopatra has? Who knows how many times Cleopatra may have assumed, oh, this must be coming from one of my future lives, when in fact, again, it's all simultaneously coexistent. So, again, this helps you live more in the moment, understand the mechanisms and how different a description of the mechanism can be from a description of what appears to be the experience from a space-time lens perspective. Again, the most important thing to take away from this is the changing of your definitions from outmoded ones, outdated ones, old-fashioned ones, so that you understand that there can be a vast difference between a description of the experience, or how the experience appears to be happening, as opposed to how the experience is actually mechanically happening. So if you start from the premise of understanding that everything exists now, you can then decode, in a sense, and decipher and translate the experience, and realize that the description of the experience, again, is not necessarily a description of how it's actually happening, how the experience is being truly created. And you can start to deconstruct these ideas of old-fashioned definitions of experience and begin to truly understand the modern understanding, the modern definition for your 21st century of the actual mechanisms behind everything you experience in physical terms. So we thank you for allowing us to share with you this idea, this day of your time, to bring you more into the present and give you an opportunity to understand more deeply how mechanisms of consciousness work, so that you can learn to differentiate between the experience and the mechanism, and use modern definitions to propel you forward in understanding of how you create your reality, so that you can do so with more consciousness, more awareness, and more efficiency. And this will make all the difference in how you experience your reality. So, in return for allowing us to share this information with you, I ask now, in what way may we be of assistance to you? You may begin your questions and dialogue if you wish.
Hello, good day, Bashar.
And good day to you.
How are you?
Perfect, and you?
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
As are we, thank you.
So, Bashar, in terms of reincarnation and what you just expressed, this means that the old definitions of Buddhism or the cycle of life, that was actually old definitions at that moment that are not relevant for us at this time?
They are only relevant as a description of how the experience appears to you, but they are not relevant as a description of the actual underlying mechanism. That is correct.
Okay. And when we talk about lives, the lives of our oversoul,
Yes.
we talk about the physical lives and the non-physical lives.
Yes.
In all the densities?
Well, it depends on what density you're coming from. Because again, there can be oversouls, there can be oversouls of oversouls, and on and on and on, all the way up to all that is.
Okay, so if I ask, for example, in my oversoul, how many lives from the third density to seventh density, physical and non-physical, an oversoul or my oversoul might have, is that a number?
Well, no, because as I already said, it's always dynamically changing because you're constantly plugging in and unplugging from the different things you may need at any given moment. So I could say right now it's 38. In the next 5 minutes, I could say it's 38,000. It just depends on what you need at any given moment.
But those are the ones that I'm connecting because they're relevant. But we could say that I do have all of them, even though I'm not connecting to them right now. I'm part of that oversoul.
If you're coming from that particular perspective of the oversoul, yes. But when you say I, you're referring to yourself as a physical being, and therefore it's not relevant for that, because it's only relevant for the level of the oversoul that you're now referring to. So you always have to make sure you're clear about what level of I you're actually coming from when you make a statement.
Okay. And Bashar, a question about animals. Animals are part of an oversoul or not?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so
they're identical in every way to humans in the sense that they have their own oversouls, they have souls, they have higher minds, they have physical minds. They just operate differently. They just see things from a different perspective.
So I could have in my oversoul a life as a horse, a cat?
No, not directly. You can have one in a different kind of oversoul, but we're not addressing that right now because we don't want to add too much information that might confuse everyone. So it's not like you can say, I was a cat, I was a horse. There are connections that do exist, but not in the way that we're describing right now. We're only focusing on the idea of those connections that are germane for your experience as a human or a member of humanity, not the idea directly linearly that a member of humanity was directly linearly experiencing a cat. You can connect to anything, a tree, a cat, a rock, but that's a slightly different mechanism we'll address at another time.
Okay. And finally, Bashar, when we die,
yes,
then we'll always be that spirit of that soul that had this life.
That spirit will always exist, but again, you will contain it in the same way that you as an adult can still contain the experience of yourself as a child, but you're more than that now. So you will always retain the idea that there is an autonomous representation called the spirit that is relevant for that particular life the physical being had, so to speak, linearly speaking, but you will be bigger than that. It will be something that will be within you, even though it will always exist on its own as well.
And at that point, I can interact with other of the lives of my oversoul.
Yes, you can, but again, depends on what I you're talking about.
Okay. All right, well, I guess that's it for me now.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bashar. Good day. Ciao.
Good day.
Hello, Bashar. This is Sandra from Miami, Florida. My question is in regards to the triangular-shaped UFO report that was discussed briefly in the previous transmission titled A Step Along the Way. You had mentioned that there may be an agenda attached to as to why they're releasing that information, although you did confirm the video in the report was authentic. Would you be willing to share a potential time frame for the physical manifestation of the agenda? Thank you and good day.
Well, again, it matches simply the same window as the one for open contact between 2023 and 2033 or 2040, give or take. So you have to pay attention to how the information is being utilized or interpreted or applied to determine which individuals may be willing to use it for positive reasons and which may be willing to use it for negative reasons. Because if used negatively, it would be for the purpose of making you fear the idea of contact. If used positively, then obviously the opposite.
Good day, Bashar. Thank you very much for being available today.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
Thank you. First, I'd love to know, can you tell me anything about why I feel such kinship with you all, with Willa and you and April and Emmy and everybody?
Because a particular vibrational frequency is being given off by the experience that we all collectively represent, that you find, shall we just say, at this particular moment, the kind of frequency permission slip that allows you to discover more of yourself, because you are connected to hybrids, because you are connected in ways that we represent.
Can you tell me more about how I'm connected?
Energetically.
I see.
And you may yourself have connections to what you call alternate counterparts, alternate versions, simultaneous incarnations in different civilizations that represent hybrid realities.
So it's just the feeling of community that I'm responding to that I love so much?
In a sense, it doesn't mean that you're not making connections to specific incarnations that may themselves actually be hybrids or other extraterrestrial forms.
And of course, the answer is to just keep following my highest excitement, and more of that will be revealed at the perfect time, I'm assuming.
Well, yes, it will, but the answer is incomplete if you only leave it at acting on your highest excitement, because the formula contains a few other points.
Follow my excitement as far as I can without attachment to outcome, and putting a good definition on it.
And stay in a positive state no matter what happens, so that you can get the benefit from it, and always let go of whatever belief systems that are fear-based or negative that don't work for you.
Yes.
By doing that, you raise your vibration. By raising your vibration, you become a better receiver or a better antenna, if you wish, for higher frequency awareness and information. And therefore, you will know what you need to know when you need to know it, because you'll be allowing the organizing principle of synchronicity to not be impeded by any belief system that would keep it from working for you to your advantage.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For about a year, I've been working with a frequency generating device.
All right.
Tesla said that frequencies were the medicine of the future. And I've heard you talk before about frequencies being able to diagnose and support, and that we're all moving towards that.
Generally speaking, yes.
So what I'm trying to understand is maybe a more general question about the interaction with the idea of the permission slip itself.
Yes.
And so how do I, like, what part do I play when I deliver the frequencies? The device has analyzed what is going to help people, and then it delivers them. Am I some kind of a consciousness bridge, or how does that work?
Yes, it's the same thing that we're doing right now. By sharing the information in the way that we're sharing it, the idea also is that we're giving off a particular frequency, not only in the information, but literally, physically, through the channel's bioelectric field. If someone decides to match that frequency, it represents the idea of going into a higher frequency state, which is more representative of the true self, and therefore different things happen on that level. But the idea is that all you can do is share that frequency that you believe represents a healed state or a higher state or a more representative state, that if a person decides to match it, will allow them to feel or experience themselves as a more natural version of themselves, as a higher frequency version of themselves. But sharing the information is one thing. You have to allow them to decide whether or not to match the frequency. All you can do is give them the option. What they do with the information, whether they match it or not, is none of your business.
Right. I understand that. And so I guess the piece that I'm trying to push through to some more understanding on my part is the permission slip, in this case, the frequency generator, has its own purpose and device and frequency. Why, in what ways is this permission slip different from any other? Maybe that's the question.
Well, it's different by its frequency, literally. So in other words, everything that is different from everything else is different because it's operating on a slightly different frequency of energy. That's what makes it different. It's a different pattern of energy. So the idea is, if you are gravitating, if you're attracted to use a particular thing that represents a particular frequency, the attraction is what tells you it will probably work for you because it aligns with your belief system frequency at the moment. If you change your belief system frequency, then you may also change your permission slip to one that is more representative or reflective of the new frequency that you're operating on. But the whole idea is that everything is simply resonant patterns of energy, different frequencies. That's what makes something different from something else. If they had identical frequencies, it would be the same thing. There would be no difference. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Yes. I think so. Thank you. I'll listen to it again, but I'm pretty sure it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You've spoken before about cats as familiars, and you said that they're known as familiars to us because they're familiar with multi-level dimensions.
Yes.
How best can we utilize our connection with our cats?
Think like a cat. Feel like a cat. Allow yourself to mimic and mirror the idea and identity of the vibration that the cat reflects to you.
Ooh. Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Thank you. It is. I've listened to many of your past transmissions, and I don't think I've heard anything about crop circles. Can you tell us anything about who makes them and why?
We have touched on it from time to time, but the idea is that it is a collective creation, not only involving what you call elemental consciousness, nature spirits, in other words, but also some ET consciousness and also human collective consciousness attempting, in a sense, to tell yourselves something about the idea of the balance of nature and your expression of yourselves as nature in a variety of ways. They are multidimensional structures of which you are only seeing a slice in 2 dimensions. So it's a kind of language that your own collective higher consciousness is attempting to communicate to you through the idea of nature, so that you can connect yourselves and express yourselves to nature and as nature more solidly.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. As always, I appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Again, it is our passion and our pleasure. We thank you.
Thank you.
How are you? Hope all is well your end, and hi to everybody else who's tuned in. This is the first time that I am asking a question, and I am super excited. So I feel that I am ready to have an initial open contact with the Yael, since according to Bashar on this timeline, they may be the first in which we have open contact with. If I was meeting a friend from Earth, we would put in our calendar, in our diaries, the date, the time, and then we would meet there. So what is the best way of contacting the Yael on a specific date, time, and place that we can all meet and have first open contact? If not, can I just choose a date and see who shows up? Looking forward to the answer, and thank you. Bye.
You can choose all you wish. Some may or may not show up. Again, the way to ensure this happens, at least to the best of your ability, is by following the formula, because it will raise your frequency to the appropriate level in order for that contact to take place. You may not be able to insist upon or determine the exact date from the level you're already operating on. And you may think that you're ready, but you may or may not be. So the idea is to trust that by acting on the formula, you will make yourself ready without insisting on what that readiness must look like in terms of an interpretation of date or time. It will happen when it needs to, in perfect timing. Don't focus on it. Just get on with your life, follow the formula. It will happen when it needs to.
Hello, Bashar.
And a you good day.
Unconditional love to you and all of your civilization. It is nice to make contact.
It is.
I have a question about your phone number. The
Yes.
black triangle with the light on the back.
Yes.
When I meditate on it, sometimes I try to see the light behind it. And I consider like it's a triangle that's blocking it. I don't know if it's some information that I'm trying to perceive. Any insights on that triangle?
Again, are you referring to the idea of imagining the image that we described?
Yes.
Well, what other information do you feel you need?
I feel that there's this light behind the triangle that I need to see or perceive that information that is being blocked by the black triangle. Is this accurate?
No. The idea of the image with the blue light coming from behind it against a black background is what puts you squarely into the information stream of our collective consciousness. From that point, you will know that you are on the right frequency to download information from our reality. But from that point forward, it has to be wherever you direct your consciousness to what you are interested in downloading. So you have to direct it like a conversation from that point forward. Information isn't being blocked. It's simply that what you've created is an open line. You have to direct your consciousness through some sort of dialogue in your mind to what kind of information you want to access once the line is open.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask about Zen philosophy, mindfulness? I consider meditation as a few years back. I
Yes.
studied Eckhart Tolle's teachings of
Yes.
silencing the mind and just be the observer and being in that consciousness.
Yes.
But after a while, I found it boring. Or
Then it's no longer your permission slip. Remember, these are all permission slips. You get to decide at any given moment what works for you. Sometimes you will use part of this and it will work for a while, but then you may change. And if you change as a person, you may need to attract a different permission slip that will now work for the new person that you are. First step is to always make sure you're not the one making the excitement go away because you're holding on to a fear-based or negative belief that is in fact blocking the information that could be exciting. But as long as you clear that from yourself and you're not blocking information or dampening the excitement, then it may simply be an indication that that's no longer representative of your passion. Switch to something else that is.
And isn't blocking thoughts or not thinking a kind of escapism from reality?
Well, it depends on how you use it. So again, anything can be used for positive or negative reasons. If you are blocking things as an escape, well, you have to be honest with yourself about whether or not that's what you're doing. But the idea also of simply suspending thought for a moment can allow other forms of communication on different levels of consciousness to come into you because you're getting your mind out of the way and not allowing your mind to block information from another level. But again, you have to know what you're doing and why. And you have to learn to tell the difference between when you're doing something from excitement or doing it from anxiety. You just have to be honest with yourself about the reason why you're choosing to do something.
Thank you.
Yes.
And a question about abundance, specifically to money. I understand there's 5 forms of abundance.
Well, there's more, but we have talked about 5.
We have talked about those 5, and I have practiced several of them. But about money,
Yes.
I like that one. I like that form of
Yes,
abundance.
that's fine, but you have to let them all be equal. Otherwise, you're putting insistence on one form over another.
How can I amplify money, the money part?
I can't give you that because I'm taking you away from the equality of the different forms of abundance if I do.
Okay. So it's my process. Yeah.
In other words, if that is truly the way that works best for you, you don't have to focus on it. That's the way it will unfold. But you can't insist on it. Otherwise, you're actually shutting the doors through which other forms could come. You have to let go of the idea that that's more important than any other form.
Okay. Have I interacted directly in dreams with you?
With me directly,
Yeah, with you directly.
there has been one occasion, but mostly you're interacting with other hybrids.
Correct. And what is the fastest way to deprogram religion out of my system and out of my psyche?
Well, what reasons are you giving yourself to hold on to it? Does it serve you somehow? Does it make sense to you?
No.
Well, then, if it really didn't make sense, you wouldn't hold on to it because nobody holds on to things that don't make sense. If you keep holding on to it, there is some belief within you that's making it make sense to do so, mostly, usually, because you're afraid of the alternative.
Correct. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I wake up with this singing bowl noises around my ears, and I think everybody in the neighborhood is listening to them, but it's me.
Yes. You're giving yourself an opportunity to match the frequency that is more representative of your spiritual higher self. So go with the flow and match that frequency, and you'll be letting go of the things that make no sense to you anymore.
Okay. Two last questions. What is the symbolism behind the all-seeing eye that we see collectively in the dollar bill, in several places, and also positive spiritual places? I'm confused because it's related to conspiracy theories,
Yes.
but also to also positivity.
As I said, anything can be used positively or negatively, yes?
Yes.
Its original meaning, for the most part, was the idea simply of understanding all that is, that knowledge is everywhere and you access it anywhere you are whatsoever, that you have the ability to see clearly who you are and express yourself clearly in that way through your own empowerment. Of course, like many things, certain symbols have been utilized for negative intentions and negative reasons as well. For example, look at what you call the swastika. Originally, in ancient cultures, that particular symbol was used to represent the motive and powerful forces of creation itself. But of course, individuals using it in a negative context have corrupted it, and now it has a different meaning for many people on your planet, even though if you look back in ancient times, you will see that it meant something very, very different. So just pay attention to the fact that it doesn't matter what the symbol is. There are people that are going to use it in positive ways. There are people that are going to use it in negative ways. You get to decide what it means for you.
Okay. And lastly, Bashar, how can I be certain that there is no death, that there is life after this one, experientially, not just conceptually?
It's up to you to go through a process. If you need convincing, you can go through a process of understanding how things work. And what we're simply saying is, do you exist? The answer is yes. If you understand that you will change form, but that it's not possible for you to stop existing, if you understand that concept, because existence only has one quality, to exist, and cannot become that which doesn't exist, because by definition, non-existence doesn't exist, then there's nowhere for that which exists to go. So the idea is, if you understand that mechanical concept that existence simply has no choice but to exist, then you'll understand that the only thing that would happen upon death is that you would simply change form, but the you that makes you you cannot stop existing. So there has to be another form in which it would exist. Right. So if you understand that, then you are convinced because you understand how things are, how things work.
Correct. Thank you so much for your insights and for your presence in this lifetime. It has guided me And I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, we appreciate all of you, and remember that you're guiding yourself no matter how much information we may share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chibai.
Aveo.
Bashar, my name is Rudrat and I'm from India. My question is how we can stop procrastination and be more active, and the reason behind procrastination.
If it's truly procrastination and not just simply gauging a correct timing, then it's the result of fear. A belief that says that if you move forward, something bad will happen. Or that you're basing it on a belief in your incapability of doing something. That's procrastination, because in your language, procrastination is already the negative.
And how we can become more active practically. Thank you.
Getting in touch with your fear-based beliefs and recognizing that they don't serve you and letting them go, and understanding that what they're telling you, that you're not capable of it, that you're not worthy of it, that something worse will happen if you move forward, are not facts. You have to come to the understanding that they're just points of view, just belief systems, where the negative belief is attempting to get you to not let it go, because that's one way that beliefs have of perpetuating themselves so that you can have a physical reality experience, is by getting you to buy into what they're telling you. So, of course, negative beliefs attempt to get you to buy into negative ideas. And then it results in no movement, no action. And that's the negative procrastination, which is very different than simply recognizing the natural timing of something and not trying to force it. But you have to be able to be telling the difference with honest self-evaluation about what your beliefs are telling you and what you're buying into, positive or negative.
Good day, Bashar. It's good to communicate with you in this fashion again. Thank you. I have a couple of questions about Anima and her role in the first contact program. And what would be her responsibilities?
As a social engineer, she would come along later, along with many of her co-workers or colleagues, if you wish to call them that, because once contact opens up more broadly on your planet, then there is the whole issue of how do you acclimate to that? And therefore the social engineers come in to explain the easiest ways for your society to begin to adapt to the idea of recognizing that you're not alone in the universe.
Would that be coming in telepathically or actually in a physical form?
Both.
Is she interacting with us now?
She's always paying attention to any first contact experience so that she can understand to what degree her social engineering skills need to play a part in the eventual open contact that may occur.
And how about Epsilon, Epiphany, and Eclipse? Are they part of the first contact program as well?
Well, you do understand that they are artificially intelligent structures, yes?
Yes.
They're not people.
I know personally they're not people, but they interact with our reality through our through our moon. Is that correct?
Yes, we have guided the energy to be reflected off your moon to allow you to experience the stabilization effect that they offer. So yes, of course, in that sense, they play a part. Yes, of course, they're involved. But the idea is that they're not involved in the same way that individual physical people are. They're providing more of a background vibration of stability, of balance.
Yes, I sense that when I look at the moon in our reality here.
Yes, yes.
It's very, there's been a sweeping change in what I consider my own reality, which I feel is a third reality of what I've been working with over the years.
Yes.
And it was very, very gentle and moved very swiftly into another reality because of the synchronicities that I had recognized were not there before.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, that's the way it happens for most people.
Yeah, it was very nice, very open, and still is just a gentle stream of consciousness just supporting.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you. And is this this is also the third reality that we've been discussing over the years, correct?
Well,
The
in a
frequency.
sense, although leaving it as just number 3 may be a little bit misleading because, again, remember, you're shifting realities billions of times a second, but you're creating a third continuity to impose upon the changes that make it seem like a consistent new timeline.
I see.
Do you understand?
I do.
All right.
I'm just, it's a very vast subject, so I did get a piece of that. Thank you.
All right. All right.
How far above Bell Rock are you right now?
About 3,000 miles.
Okay, that's consistent. It's been consistent from last time we heard it. I think it was 3,000 miles.
Yes.
So what does that consistency mean to us or to you?
Well, the consistency means, again, that there is stability being created and continuity being created in the new direction that most of you are taking that are relating to beings like myself.
I see that. I feel our world is getting more conscious, and
The one you're in, yes.
the one I'm in.
Yes, because other versions of Earth are not. So you can only experience the version you're in. And if the version you're in appears to you to reflect the idea of an increase in consciousness, then that's representative of that version of Earth.
Going back to the chart that I'd seen earlier, I understand what you're saying. It's not a linear fashion. It's multidimensional.
Well, yes, you may create linearity in your particular version of the shifts that you're doing billions of times a second because you're still experiencing the concept of perspective from space-time. But nevertheless, there are others that are shifting in different directions as well. And eventually, even though you can still see them, you eventually won't.
I'm feeling that already in the background. That it's like a dreamy thing. It's like, oh, did that happen, or was that real? And I know it was. If I don't focus on it, it's really very, very light in the background.
Yes, it doesn't mean it's not real. It just may mean it's not real for you in your reality, but you may still be minimally aware of it.
Yes, and I've been doing a lot of internal reviewing of where I've been and where I am now to see, my own progress and so forth. And I remember the first 30 years of my life that I just had a real great time, and I didn't pay attention to anything like other than my own focus. And it seems like that's where we're back here again.
In a sense, but differently, because now you can be aware of more things and yet not divert yourself from the path that you're on.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm much more well informed as how I'm focusing my energy right now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
It is.
Yeah, very exciting and very lovely. It's a very lovely energy transition.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for the information that I've received along the way, especially through through your teaching. So thanks again. And
it is our passion and our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Good day.
Good day.
Hi, Bashar. This is Jantine from the Netherlands. I wanted to ask you a question on menopause. You recently mentioned that hormones are a part of the structures upon which our belief systems are built. And I was wondering what the effect of these big hormonal changes is on the lives of women. Can you shed some more light on what's happening during that phase and also the effect it has on our belief systems? Thank you so much, Bashar.
Well, of course, again, remember that it's more about what effect do belief systems have on menopause. The idea of menopause in its natural form is a changing of the frequency from what you might call a youth into an elder, and therefore the idea of womanhood's elder factions, they become then the medicine women, the wise women, who are able to then focus their energy in a particular way that has to do with guiding the so-called society in which they live, guiding the so-called tribes of which they are now considered to be the wisest. And so the idea has been looked upon in a very negative way to create all sorts of changes that don't need to occur in the way they have been occurring because of the degree of negative labels and uncertainty about it and all sorts of ways in which women have been taught to look at themselves in life. So the idea of the hormonal changes are hormonal changes that are representative of shift in belief system to a much broader and higher level of instruction and guidance that then plays a part as an elder in a society.
Greetings, Bashar.
And a you good day.
It is an honor to be connecting with you.
And our honor to be connecting with all of you as well.
I want to share a dream that I had recently.
All right.
And a bit of a quick short story of synchronicity. I was just 2 nights ago, I woke up from a dream, and in the dream, I was exploring some series of underground caves and caverns, and we were searching for a crystal skull.
Yes.
Found the skull in a box, a friend of mine in the dream, and the box seemed too small for the skull to fit in. And he opened the box once we retrieved it and we're above ground, and the skull came out, and I started having this deep emotional expression and love and joy, and I'm crying in the dream, and I just feel this connection with this skull. And I get down to the level of the skull to sync my eyes and skull with the skull and mirror it.
Yes.
I start to experience almost like my skull is a singing bowl being sung in a really intense vibrational connection.
Yes.
And I could see my eyes reflected in the eye sockets of the skull, and they were flashing red with the frequency of the moom, moom. And every time that frequency came around, the red flash in my eyes would flash until it became unified, and I kind of fell back with tons of energy going through my body, and I woke up. And I wanted to share that with you because when I shared it with a friend, I said, this would be really great to talk to Bashar about. And then I got an email said, hey, you want to talk to Bashar tomorrow? We have a opening for you. So it all felt very synchronistic.
Well, it is. Everything is synchronicity. It's just a matter of whether you are aware of it or not.
Right. So I was wondering, was that dream a connection, like a parallel life connection, or was that more of a grooming me to get used to certain frequencies?
The second one.
That's what I thought. Was the skull in my dream a representation of Pele?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because it feels like I feel very excited to connect with that skull and possibly interact or be some sort of keeper or protector of that skull.
It is a very deep, which was symbolized by the idea of the underground tunnels, deep earth vibration to the soul, in a sense, of the earth itself.
Right.
To the core of the earth itself, and therefore to your core.
And so why did the skull choose to have this interaction with me specifically?
Because you chose to have the interaction with it.
To experience an aspect of my core?
Yes, to allow yourself to begin to blend more of that deeper core energy and allow it to filter up into your more conscious, aware mind.
So as to...
In other words, to go from the core and explode into the surface like a volcano. Pele, yes?
Right. So it was more for my own transformation than anything grooming me, maybe specifically for interactions with that skull physically.
Well, that is not necessarily an impossibility, but nevertheless, you're the one doing this.
Right.
So you're using those symbols and those connections, those frequencies, in order to allow yourself to groom yourself for more interaction on different levels, both of the earth and interdimensionally.
I see.
Bringing things from the core to the surface.
Got it.
Creating new land, in a sense. Do you understand?
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very synchronistic because we are actually looking at creating some, well, not land per se, but communities on land. So that was...
Same thing.
Yeah.
Because you're changing the vibration and therefore creating a new reality, a new space.
Right.
But it's coming from the deep core self. You have to have that deep anchor to ground you in order to participate in something that represents higher frequencies.
I see. Yeah, because to me, it feels like even when I think about it, I get this immense grounded strength of certainty that feels impenetrable.
That is your indestructible core. All of you have it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I believe I saw a hybrid child in physical form. I was around the Bell Rock vortex and I was sharing about hybrid children. And I was walking back off trail and came around a bend and saw a hybrid child female standing in front of me. And as soon as I saw her, she blipped out of reality and she was gone. And I was wondering if this is a type of stage of contact that hybrids are playing with us in a sense to see if we can recognize them.
Yes.
All right, awesome. And can you confirm if that was Raven?
She's saying that's not all I am.
Interesting. Can she elaborate on what that means?
No.
Or is that mine? Okay. Thank you. There's a term in the raw material of the Law of One, and the term is harvest. And I believe when you shared an experience, last question here. When you shared the experience of your collective going into a meditation for 3 days and emerging essentially in fourth density experience with no sleep and food, this sort of thing.
That is the Shakana experience.
The Shakana experience, exactly. And so would you say that our becoming the sixth hybrid race, as Ra was talking, it said every 26,000 years, there's like this cosmic clock, the precession of the equinox, where we have the opportunity to shift densities as a collective and have our own experience of a harvest in a sense?
Yes, you are shifting. Now, of course, this won't necessarily be the choice that everyone makes because, again, you're splitting into different versions of Earth, so to speak.
Right. And so in a sense, becoming a sixth hybrid race is can't really say a shortcut, but kind of like a shortcut to the harvest because we're blending with individuals and beings that are further gradations of density, and in a sense, allowing ourselves to get to the full transition of fourth density a lot quicker.
Yes, if you match the frequencies that those kinds of beings, such as ourselves, are sharing with you, of course it will accelerate things because you are not getting in your own way by holding on to beliefs that don't work for the fourth density reality.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So remember, the idea of a harvest is also the idea of letting go of the chaff and just keeping the kernels.
Got it. Chaff being the negative limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, last quick question and I'll pass it.
Oh, the last question.
Last. You've heard that so many times.
Yes.
There was a prophecy given in the 90s about Austin, Texas becoming one of the first, quote, golden cities that will create kind of a new model for community and interaction. Do you have anything you could share on this idea?
At this time, no.
Okay. Thank you, Bashar.
Except, again, to remind you, there's no such thing as a prediction of the future.
Absolutely.
There is an sensing of the energy that exists at the moment the prediction is made. Once the prediction is known, you get to decide what direction to take that in.
I see. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bashar.
You are welcome.
Hello, Bashar and Bashar team. This is Linda from Copenhagen, Denmark. I would like to ask about the Earthborn preparers. You gave them the name preparers in your previous transmission. The ones who have been hybridized in the womb and then born onto the planet and who work with, sensitizing humans to like hybrid vibration and so forth. So can you elaborate more on them? Like how many are there? How do they work? How do people react when they encounter these preparers? How many are there in the different countries? Are they in every country? What is the age range? Are there any specific abilities? Are they more psychic? In another transmission, you agreed to call them the indigos. There was a lady who asked if it were the indigos, and you said that term could be sufficient to describe them. So if you can please just, go more into that, that would be lovely. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Generally speaking, right now, there are hundreds of thousands of preparers, perhaps even millions by now, as we read your collective energy. The idea, again, is that they give off a certain frequency and they gravitate towards certain ideas and subjects that have to do with a more expansive view of the universe, a deeper connection to spirit, a clearer recognition of who and what they are, and not getting caught up so much in outdated ideas that no longer work. So the idea, again, is to recognize this has been happening now for a few decades, and that it will continue to grow and express itself in the versions of Earth that have chosen collectively to head in the direction, to navigate in the direction of open contact, until such time as the majority of the population of that version of Earth are hybridized to that frequency. And that is the version, or several versions, because there are several versions of any particular possibility or probability, that will then be the versions that experience the concept of open contact in the way that we have been discussing it. Other versions may experience different ideas of open contact. Other versions may not experience it at all. But the ones that are hybridized as preparers in that sense will form generally, in most versions, the majority of the population, generally speaking, by about your year of 2050.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Thank you for interacting with us today.
Again, our passion and our pleasure.
Thank you. I feel like we're able to connect with our quote unquote past lives. Like, I feel a strong connection to certain time periods, like specifically for me, the late 1800s and biblical times, the Exodus time. I feel very connected to that. But why can't I, or why aren't I able to recognize any connections with, a quote unquote future life?
Well, you do. You may just not recognize them for what they are. Because again, the concept of the so-called future in most of your minds is very different than the concept of the so-called past. You consider the past to be more crystallized than the future. So the idea of your future being a little bit more open-ended to you allows it to seem a little bit more vague and not as easily recognizable, because you don't consider the future to be fixed, which it's not. But you do consider the past to be fixed in most cases. So in your mind, that's why it's easier to recognize the so-called past connections, quote unquote, as opposed to the so-called future connections, quote unquote. But you do have them. It's just that you usually see them as imagination.
Mm-hmm. Is there something I can do to kind of help myself recognize those a little better?
Follow the formula.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. You are welcome. Thank you.
Love you very much. Bye.
Our love to you as well. Good day.
Hello, Bashar. When we shift from different parallel realities to other parallel realities and versions of Earth, do we have the same oversoul? And is it the same version of all that is, or do we have different versions of our own oversoul and different versions of all that is? How can we differentiate between people that have their oversoul focused in the same version of Earth as our oversoul is focused? Thank you.
You would be able to tell by the difference in vibrational compatibility. Now, you have a little bit of a range in that. No one has to be absolutely identical to the way that you perceive wavelength or reality, but they may be close enough that you recognize vibrational compatibility. And that would tell you you're generally operating in a so-called shared reality, a shared version of Earth. But the idea is that in general, yes, different persons, different physical individuals have different higher minds and may have the idea of a different soul. They may have a similar oversoul, but they don't have to. It just depends on what it is that they're doing and why they made the choices that they made to experience what they chose to experience from the oversoul perspective. But generally speaking, an oversoul breaks into a soul, individual different souls, and each individual different soul creates a different higher mind for each personality because they're different. So each higher mind has to be matched in frequency to the idea of the personality or individual physical person that is experiencing the concept of physical reality.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Over the past 2 years, one of the themes in my life has been moving around a lot, like physically moving.
Yes.
So I'm still filling out where I want to settle down, if I settle down, but I feel like I haven't figured out the exact place I want to be yet.
Well, you know that synchronicity will provide that if and when it becomes relevant for you. So in the meantime, keep gathering the energies of different places so that you will have familiarity with all the different vibrations you need to be familiar with that you can then include in any one single place that you might settle into. You're gathering, you're building.
Right. I guess
Yes.
part of me is getting comfortable with that because there's part of me that wants to nest, and just be in one place, but I haven't been comfortable yet in one place.
That's fine. So just keep following your passion. Again, it's like saying, I'm going to paint a painting, but I don't have all the colors yet.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
You will know when you do.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it will feel natural to you.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And then the other thing that I wanted to chat with you about is I know the topic is reincarnation, and I've always found that as a fascinating place of exploration. And I know it's also parallel lives existing at once. I'm aware of that. But I remember when I was 13 and 14, and I was just starting to open up to like the metaphysical environment and ideas.
Yes.
And I started reading these books called like Saved by the Light, Embraced by the Light, Many Masters, Many Lives, The Celestial Prophecy, all that. I was around 13, 14. And I just remember connecting through the words of the people, like to what they saw, like when they were traveling down that tunnel of light between lives, and then they would come back. They would leave and they'd come back. And I remember feeling that presence and feeling that essence and how pure that life substance was behind the veil. And I remember always wanting to connect with that. And that in a way has been like an underlying theme in my life, connecting with that spirit presence, that essence. Mm-hmm.
And you're doing that, except you're doing it from a physical perspective, so it appears to be happening a little bit more slowly.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Yeah. And I just remember like when I was young, well, not young, I'm, relative. When I was that young, 13 and 14, it felt really tangible. And I imagine the feelings and the interactions that you have with spirit, of course, change throughout your life.
Yes, of course they do, because you're changing. And again, you need to gather other information. You'll experience it again, but you'll experience it differently after you gather what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you with that.
Thank you.
And then I guess there's one more thing. The other thing that I felt really connected to parallel of other lives.
Do you mean
like
of versions that look like you or something else?
something else?
Yes.
Something else. So is you know your 11-11 meditation that you do with the
Yes.
mirror?
Yes.
And I would do that, and I would see other aspects, other lives of me that were not human, and it was just so interesting to see those like come through.
Yes.
And I felt them assisting with this life at that time. And I
Yes.
remember so many shifts and changes. But that was one of the instances that it really came through really strong. And I was thinking, I should do that again. I love that 11-11 meditation.
All right, then by all means, please do.
So anyhow, well, I really appreciate connecting with you.
And you as well.
And I was wondering, is there any messages that are coming through from spirit or my ancestors right now for me?
Pay attention to the waxing crescent moon and where you are at that moment. For a gateway opens and a communication can be had that you're not necessarily expecting right now. So pay attention to the waxing crescent moon.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bashar.
You are so welcome.
All right. Much love.
And to you.
Thank you.
Unconditionally.
Thank you.
Hello, Tadeo.
Mania.
I have some questions from our viewers.
All right. Please proceed.
All right. The first question is, do we share reincarnations with the same set of souls in our family or people or spirits? And do we choose who to reincarnate with each time, or is it random?
Well, as we have discussed many times, reincarnation, while it can be created as an experience, isn't mechanically what's happening. Everything exists now. So what you choose for a particular experience in the moment, in the present, and make your connections according to what is relevant for your theme of exploration. So those connections are plugged in, unplugged. It isn't really reincarnation. But from every perspective, you choose what is relevant to connect to for that perspective.
So from an idea of all things being now, you may have different soul families in every different now, or you have a big soul family, and then different experiences are selected for different members of that soul family.
You can have many different levels of that idea, and you will pick the one, you will connect to the one that is relevant for what you're experiencing as this you. Whereas in parallel realities, the soul families may be very different.
And in the parallel realities, even though those are other versions of me, they're still not me.
Right? You are you, they are they. Each is an individual, unique. Therefore, all things are happening at once, all views, all perspectives, all experiences, and you connect to what is relevant for the experience that you are having as the you know yourself to be in your particular reality.
And the me that I know myself to be in this reality, this is connected with the personality construct of the me that I'm experiencing. And all the other versions have different personality constructs.
Yes, of course, because different personality equals different person. And even though you may think you look alike, you're not the same person.
And even though we may have similarities, none of them are really essentially me. The only me is the one or the only me that I relate to is the one that has this personality construct and is having this life theme experience.
Yes, but when you say relate to, you can connect to other versions of yourself, but you will do that from your unique perspective as they will do from their unique perspective.
Do people ever get jealous of their other versions that are having better experiences?
Knowing how things work on Earth, yes, that has happened.
Fascinating. What happens if you don't complete your life path? Like if you don't follow the soul path and that you set up for this lifetime, and you don't complete your walk down the hallway, so to speak, what happens? Does that automatically mean you'll reincarnate on Earth in a sense?
No. Again, reincarnation is an illusion. So you will make whatever decision you deem to be appropriate in whatever state you are, whether physical or non-physical, to either continue to learn the idea in a different way or to learn it some other way that is completely different. So the idea really is that you will use what it is you have experienced to your advantage, and you will make your decisions accordingly as to what to experience next.
And in that sense, it would just be a continuous experience then.
Yes, of course. You may change your form, but you go on, and the experience of being you in whatever form you're in continues. Because you exist. And time and space are illusions, so no matter what space-time framework or filter you impose upon your consciousness, you are still you in the now. And that's what makes it appear to continue when you interpret the now in a space-time framework, in a space-time way.
So you wouldn't experience necessarily regret about not finishing your life path?
Well, it's not impossible to experience the regret. I'm just simply saying you can use that to your advantage too. But it is not as likely when you go into the spirit realm that you will see it that way.
I see. Yeah, where do we, in a sense, go after we die out of 3D? Like the idea that the soul transitions from the three-dimensional paradigm. And what is the best way to explain in our language where the soul goes or can go?
It goes nowhere. In the classical sense, the mechanical sense, it goes nowhere. You can have an experience of feeling like you're somewhere else, experiencing like you're somewhere else, but that's an arbitrary, illusionary experience. To put it in simple terms, where does a television program go when you change the channel? The vibrations may still be there, the frequency may still be there, the program may still be playing, but you're on a different channel, so you see a different thing. It doesn't go anywhere because there's nowhere to go in its most fundamental response to that question. Everything is here and now. So everyone that has ever lived and ever died, everyone, everywhere, is right here, right now, but it is the frequencies that create a sense of separation so that they become invisible to you. But they're all right here.
So, and the soul itself, that's beyond the higher self. The next level up is the soul, or the soul is connected to the individual personality? How does that work?
The soul is connected to the individual personality and creates the higher mind, non-physically, and the physical mind to have the physical experience.
Okay. So you can never be separated from your soul in a sense. It doesn't go anywhere different than you. It's always with you in whatever form you're in.
You are always it. It's not with you. You are it. You are the soul.
So when we wake up after we die, so to speak, does our life that we've had fade away like a dream?
No, not at first. You will usually, although there are some exceptions, but you will usually go through what is called life review, which is simply an assessment of what it is you learned, what it is you experienced, and how you can use it to make a decision as to what to do next. Now, you can allow it to fade eventually if certain aspects of it no longer serve you, but it will always be with you and always be accessible if you so desire. It becomes a part of the greater you as an experience. That's what the spirit is. It's the experience that you retain. And so it becomes a part of you, and it's always there to access. Much in the same way that you may have learned something when you were a child, and you may not think about it all the time. It may fade away, but suddenly you may need to remember that particular experience and call upon something you learned from that experience for what you're going through in the present, in your present form. So it's always there. You may not always pay attention. That's your version of it fading away. But when you need to pay attention, the information is accessible. It's always there. It's always a part of you.
So how do our ego and our personality feel about this shift that happens where you're no longer, quote unquote, existing on earth and you're simply a consciousness in spirit?
The question is relatively vague. What do you mean, how do you feel about it? You will feel whatever it is you choose to feel at that point. You will experience whatever it is you choose to experience at that point.
Well, for example, like most people before they die, or if they're in the process of dying, may struggle to stay alive in a sense.
Yes, but you are asking the question from the point of view of being already dead.
Right. So what happens to the ego and the personality when you're dead?
It becomes a part of you, but you're bigger than that. Again, similar to the idea I just explained. What happens to the part of you that is the child learning a lesson in childhood? What happens to it? It's still a part of you. You're just more than that now.
Is incarnation different for interdimensional beings than for human beings?
Human beings are interdimensional beings. Now, the experience of what type of incarnation, yes, of course, that's different, because it can be many different ways in which you can experience the concept of incarnation. But again, you're all interdimensional beings. So, what's the experience like?
I guess I was thinking more like Sasquatch or yourself. That's much more interdimensional than we experience.
Well, like I said, there are different ways to experience the concept of incarnation. So the mechanism is the same for everyone. It's just a matter of a shift in frequency, a shift in perspective. And that makes the experience different depending upon how you're expressing the incarnation. What you are as an incarnated being changes the experience. But the mechanism is no different.
I see. We've also talked about the idea of life review after death.
Yes.
And are we shown like every detail and moment of our life, and then are we only shown the unresolved or the unrealized things?
Everything. Every single split second is there. And it's not that you are shown it, it's that you are aware of it. Because there's no more barriers. There's not space and time in the same way as an experience. Therefore, all the veils drop, and you experience it. Everything that you have created, everything that you have experienced is there. And so you review it, you look at it, you absorb it, you learn from it, you move on. But remember, it doesn't take place in the same amount of time. So the life review can be experienced from your perspective in a split second.
So is that sort of like the idea of people saying, just before they died, they saw their life flash before them?
Yes, it's similar because they're very close to that moment. Now, as we said, once upon a time, the idea that everything is here and now is really what's happening. You choose a specific here and now, which has to do with that particular life and the relevance for that life experience. But the thing of it is, every single moment, in a sense, I'm just going to use this euphemism, is layered on top of every other moment. So it's you're experiencing everything at once because it's all right there. So you're seeing in more dimensions of what's right here and now when you go through life review, because it's not separated so much by time. So everything that's here and now, like a double, triple, quadruple, quintuple exposure, is all there, and that's why you get it all. Every single thing is recorded, so to speak, in the same place. That's why you experience every single second. You're seeing it more as a depth rather than stretched out linearly.
So that sort of explains the idea of if someone has committed atrocities, so to speak,
yes,
on Earth,
yes,
that when they experience life review, the shock of the depth of darkness will impact the being or the soul of...
It can, because you're experiencing things not only from your point of view, but from every point of view you have ever interacted with. Because again, that barrier drops. So there is less difference between you and anyone else.
Like, for example, you had talked about with Hitler that he literally had to be put on ice in a sense to deal with the intensity of the negativity of what had been promulgated as a result of his actions.
Yes.
Okay. So is the idea that if you live a good life and you bring a lot of happiness and joy and love into the world, that when you experience your life review, you will experience that more fully and also be able to balance that with the negative experiences that may have been generated by your behavior.
You know the law. What you put out is what you get back.
And then there's a type of processing that the consciousness goes through to absorb all of this information from a new perspective.
A type, yes. Not exactly the same kind of processing you may experience in linear space-time, but yes, a type of processing.
Okay. And like for animals, I know that question that comes up periodically about, do animals have souls and do they...
Animals are souls. Remember, you have to, in a sense, stop thinking that a soul is something you have. A soul is something you are.
So is there like the animal oversoul, or...
Absolutely.
There's the animal oversouls, okay. And
there are cat oversouls, dog oversouls, any other animal oversoul, and there is the general collective animal oversoul.
And the reason that an animal may instinctively have certain kinds of behavior that give it a lot of pleasure is because, in a sense, they're channeling the animal oversoul of their species. Is that...
Well, that can be one way that they experience a certain kind of pleasure. Yes, it's not the only way.
Right. But do they actually go through a type of life review when they pass away?
Sort of. It's not experienced exactly in the same way, but it's similar enough that I suppose you could use it as an example.
So they would, let's say a dog would...
All the experiences that animal had in life, in a sense, are reviewed, but it doesn't come with the same kind of perspective. It's not used exactly in the same way.
And they independently incarnate, or they are also... it's necessary for another consciousness such as a human to collaborate in their incarnation?
Well, it depends on what's chosen. It can be either. It depends on the theme that is chosen.
Wow, so they're not really that much different from us. They just, in a sense, speak a different language, find pleasure in other behaviors that are not quote-unquote human behaviors, and yes, they're equal to us in a certain way.
Yes. Again, the mechanisms are the same for everything.
Okay, and insects.
It's an animal. It's not a vegetable. It's not a mineral. It's an animal.
So I was just thinking of like bees, they have that hive mentality.
Well, so to speak. In actual fact, it's not really accurate to say it's a hive mentality. It's actually more of a hive empathy.
So they feel what the other bees are feeling?
Yes, that's more accurate.
Well, and is some ET civilizations actually express that idea also?
Yes, of course.
Because that's just another phenomenon of existence.
Yes.
A collective.
Yes.
With beings similar to oneself or of the same species.
Yes.
Okay, and so like a life review for a bee.
This may be difficult to explain, and so we would ask you to move on.
All right. Filled with milk and honey? No.
Not milk.
Okay. Does everyone have to go through a life review?
You don't have to, but in the afterlife, there's almost no reason not to. There can be some exceptions, but they are true exceptions for a variety of reasons we will not go into now. It's almost an automatic function, just because that's the point. Why have the life if you're not going to learn from the life?
Oh, it's so fascinating because we're doing so much connecting with animals and nature. It's just so fascinating to think of what a life review would be like from a completely different perspective, being a completely different creature.
We may touch on that at some other point.
Yes, I won't ask any more questions about it, but it is fascinating.
Yes.
Gives you more respect, I guess, in a sense, for their existence and what they are also doing.
It can.
How will the splitting prism of parallel realities appear from our perspective as the different pathways diverge? Will people who aren't aligned with us just start to sort of fade away and be further and further in the distance, or will they leave our perception altogether?
The question has answered itself. Yes. It will generally fade away in some way, shape, or form, and eventually you will no longer experience others that are no longer vibrationally compatible.
I see. And then the idea about a next incarnation, can you touch on that at all, about how those choices are made? Each individual personality, in a sense, that has its own choices about that? Is that how it works?
Again, from a linear perspective, the question makes sense when you say next, but everything already exists structurally. So it's more a matter of, if we can use this kind of an illustration for you. Imagine that your consciousness is above it all. Think of yourself for the moment as the oversoul. You have all of these extensions already. But let's just say for the moment, you decide to give a little bit of special attention to one over the others. And then in the next moment, you decide to give a little bit of special attention to a different extension that already exists. It's more like that, although that's not even an accurate description, because that's still coming from a linear perspective to some degree. But it's more about the idea of shifts in focus and patterns within the consciousness of a higher being, a higher level of yourself, that then creates the experience of a focus in a manner through the filter of space-time that appears to be the next focus. But next is only experienced from the level of the physical reality. It's not experienced from the level of the oversoul.
From that level, it's a refocusing. From this level, it's a linear experience.
That's closer to the truth, although again, that's not completely accurate, because we're using physical space-time terminology to describe this.
So how did reincarnations originally get this idea that, oh, you're going to pay back your karma of what you did in this lifetime, etc.? How far off is that from what actually happened?
Well, the idea is that you do have the ability to recognize when you may be out of alignment with yourself, out of balance. It's just that from a linear perspective, once you've bought into the idea that things have to happen one after the other, then obviously the concept of recognizing an imbalance and rebalancing yourself will automatically also fit that modality. You'll see it as something that happened in the past that needs to be balanced in the present, or perhaps if not, then balanced in the future. So the idea is that it's simply part of the overall experience of linear spacetime to fragment and disconnect things and put them in a sequential way, and including the idea of being out of alignment and rebalancing yourself.
So I suppose if you have a strong enough conviction that you need to refocus your attention on a life that makes up for something that you did in a previous life.
But you didn't do it. You didn't do it. What I'm saying is you have the linear perspective that it was you. But the idea is you are connecting to an experience of a coexisting, simultaneously existing being to aid and assist you in the theme you're exploring in this life. But the idea is that it simply got strung out in this linear idea of reincarnation and karmic balance over lifetimes because you experience the idea of linear time and one thing happening after another. And if something doesn't get balanced in one lifetime, then you made the extrapolation that it must happen in another one of your lifetimes. But that's not the mechanical reality. It's only the way you have created the illusionary experience.
So it's actually more immediate, because I know a lot of people become concerned about justice.
Yes.
You know, oh, all the injustices that are experienced on Earth, and somewhere, someplace, somebody pays for that, or it gets balanced, or they have to correct. But the mechanism is actually just in the immediacy. What you put out is what you get back. Any repercussions from anything you do happen in the same quote unquote lifetime. And
well, so to speak. The idea doesn't mean that you have to see it happening in the lifetime, because as I said, there's life review. But you have to understand that the idea of physical and non-physical reality, in a sense, is the continuation of your life. Therefore, just because it happens, just because you may recognize the idea of how to align when you're non-physical, doesn't mean the alignment hasn't happened just because it didn't happen in the physical part of the life.
I see. So it's actually a continuation. You will balance that within yourself
Yes.
at some point in your existence.
Yes, because remember, all that is already is. And therefore, it in and of itself is the idea of balance. You can't, in a sense, be outside of it. You can't be outside of it. It'll all be in balance at some point, because all that is the very concept of everything is in balance.
Yeah. It's just sort of like the human version isn't
Yes.
the way it happens. It
Yes.
really is more just a holistic thing where any aspect of the self that's out of balance will seek to move towards balance.
Exactly.
And that is what the karma is.
Yes. Moving toward balance. Yes. Aligning with that idea of moving toward balance.
Very interesting. So it's actually a lot kinder than perhaps we might imagine here on Earth, where things can get really dark. And
justice is not punishment. Justice is realization.
That's good. That's intelligent.
Yes.
So just looking a little at the human history and everything, when did the Anunnaki actually create the humans?
Homo sapien was generally genetically engineered somewhere around 350,000 years ago was the beginning of one of the programs, the major program. There were some minor experiments before that and some after, but the general idea of the beginning of that genetic program in earnest was about 350,000 years ago.
And so one question that came up was, how did souls know a new vehicle for incarnation had been created? Because that's what that was, a new vehicle.
Well, so to speak, yes. But remember, in the soul's perspective, everything exists here and now. Therefore, how did they know? All they had to do was be of the vibration that required the experience of a vehicle. And they would be drawn to a number of selections and choose what would be relevant for the theme they were going to explore.
So that's kind of where the whole hybridization, evolution of human consciousness fits in.
In a sense. But please do remember, when we use the term in your language, vehicle, we're not necessarily referring to the physical body, because a soul doesn't enter a physical body. The physical body is a projection of the soul. It's in the soul. The soul is not in the body's in the soul. You are a soul. So the idea of a vehicle is not meant as an empty physical shell. It's simply meant as a way of experiencing yourself.
And then with the hybridization program, consciousness that is interested in evolving through that process will be attracted to that vibration, become aware of the existence of that methodology in a sense, and participate.
Yes. You always are attracted to whatever you are the frequency of. It's made known to you automatically.
Who were the first physical ET beings to achieve space travel, or is that even a question?
We do not know that.
Like, are you all aware of how far into space exploration has occurred? Like, because this is our neighborhood, right? You're part of our neighborhood.
Well, no, I'm not. I can visit your neighborhood by shifting my frequency, but I live in a parallel reality. That's my neighborhood. If you want to make the separation between parallel realities a real separation vibrationally, then you have to understand that we do come from a different neighborhood. If you want to include many different levels of parallel realities, then yes, that can be a bigger neighborhood.
Okay. And then the idea of exploration into deep space, so to speak, because we're seeing this from a certain vantage point in the Milky Way and everything.
All right. Well, if you're talking about your neighborhood in terms of your physical universe experience, you're asking the question, how much of that universe has been explored?
By beings capable of exploring it.
We don't know. The universe is a big place. We're not aware of every being that may exist within even your physical universe.
Right. And so for your civilization, how far into space, in a sense? Have you gone to the furthest reaches of the universe or anything like that?
No. We have explored, I suppose perhaps if you want to put it in a percentage point, about 15% of the galaxy.
Of the galaxy? That's just the galaxy. Wow.
Yes. And there are other galaxies we have visited from time to time, but then the exploration of those galaxies is different depending on the galaxy, but probably doesn't range more than about 0.5 to 1% of the exploration of those other galaxies, because we still have so much we don't know about the galaxy that we're exploring.
Right. And so, like the Andromeda galaxy.
Yes.
That one is in our attention, we're aware of it, and there are beings from that galaxy that are connecting to us.
Yes, and they don't represent more than about 1% of that galaxy.
Wow. Boy, the universe is a busy place.
And a big one. If you're going to buy into the illusion of distance.
Distance, right. So for you, like if you have a system that you want to explore, do you just say, oh, I'd like to go over there where that star is? Or is it a little more?
Well, we have a little bit more information because, again, we can see into multiple dimensions, and it gives us a general pathway to take for our intention of creating first contact with different civilizations. Now, there are many beings within our civilization and other civilizations that are, for lack of a better term, pure explorers. And therefore, they will just simply go where they feel like going and see what they find.
Sounds very Star Trek-y.
In a sense, remember that many creators do pick up on the realities that they may not be aware of and interpret them in their stories.
I know, it's really fascinating. You said there was an earlier version of Sasani beings that interacted with ancient humans on Earth.
Yes, but there wasn't much interaction.
Yeah, because the question was, why didn't the humans go into psychic shock from those interactions?
Because only the few humans that were capable of allowing themselves to experience a certain frequency were capable of interacting to any degree with the early Sasani beings that visited your world. And that interaction was relatively limited. Mostly it was just simply the awareness of the existence of those beings from a distance and what they were doing from a distance. There were a few individuals that had a stronger interaction, but they were rare.
So even when the Earth was in earlier stages, even if people had not achieved vibrational levels where they could fully comprehend what was going on,
yes,
there were always a few that had a very high vibrational state that then could access other realities and other beings.
Yes, but also please do remember there's another mechanism involved in this as well. And that is, for a limited amount of time, beings from our society that may visit your world can create a buffer zone around themselves vibrationally where they're not necessarily expressing all of their energy. In much the same way that we limit the amount of information we can share with all of you if certain bits of information are simply not appropriate to share at this time. That can be done vibrationally as well to a certain degree.
So like from the collective experience of all these different civilizations, are very many civilizations aware of your existence?
The civilizations that are aware of our existence are those that exist within the Interstellar Alliance and a few others beyond that.
And how many civilizations are part of the Interstellar Alliance?
554.
So, okay, so it's sort of like it's in this general neighborhood, the Interstellar Alliance, since we will eventually become part of that. And there,
if you wish, yes.
Yeah, and a large number of those, like over 500 civilizations, are aware of the Sasani. Do they see you as a certain kind of specialists, as just simply first contact specialists, or is it that your way of being able to see the mechanisms of how things work behind the scenes, so to speak, like in the diagram that you made, does that set you apart as a civilization?
The only way we can really answer that is to say that there are different civilizations that see us in different ways.
Okay. Because you do seem to come through with the most unique understanding, you know, that's been delivered to this planet. And
the core of our understanding, in some sense, though it can be expressed differently, and maybe not to the same degree, or sometimes even more so than we express it, is to some degree a prerequisite for being part of the Interstellar Alliance.
So as beings move to a higher vibrational state, like what percentage of the ETs that are interacting with Earth are of such a high vibration that they would comprehend it, but then there's certainly a percentage that we may interact with that don't see the picture.
The percentage of extraterrestrial beings that are more directly interacting with Earth at this time comprise about 90% of the beings interacting with Earth from elsewhere.
Okay. Why do so many spaceships look like they're spinning when they fly?
Because some of them are.
So that's one of the ways that they generate their power source?
Yes, it doesn't mean that the internal cabin is spinning. It may just be the outer shell that is spinning.
Do spaceships sometimes leave remnants of fuel remnants on Earth if they land here, or they?
Well, some spaceships now and then that have either landed and or, as you say, crashed, have certainly left components that can be looked at or identified as quote-unquote fuel for those that use certain elements as fuel, to use that term loosely. But in certain craft, like our own, you would not find any fuel of any kind that you would be able to recognize as such.
Okay. And what percentage of the beings in our neighborhood, basically, that actually still eat? Is this something that goes away, the whole thing of eating?
No, not for everyone.
Like, do the Pleiadians still eat, or the?
They do. Not a lot, but they do.
So it's more when you're moving from fourth to fifth density, is that when the...
Well, fifth density is non-physical, so of course you don't eat in non-physical reality.
So the closer you are to non-physical reality, the less likely would be that you would consume.
The less likely, yes. It doesn't mean it's completely gone for every civilization, because again, it depends on the theme that they're exploring and what it is they are consuming and how they are consuming it.
So we might not be able to go to lunch with an Essassani being, but we...
Well, you can, but we just simply won't order anything off the menu.
But a Pleiadian can join us. I get it. Okay. You mentioned earlier that the Mayan people came to the planet via spacecraft. Is that correct?
The ancient versions of them, yes.
So were they also part of the Homo sapien creation, and they were off planet, or these were
No.
that...
There are different humanoid beings that exist elsewhere because of the concept of panspermia, which is that genetic material is delivered to different planets in different sectors by meteors and asteroids and comets that contain already the structure of what general forms of life may develop depending upon the environment of the planet that they land on. So there are many humanoid species that do exist, and sometimes these things exist in clusters within the galaxy. But there are many non-humanoid species as well.
So they were actually another species, the Mayan.
Yes.
And are there a significant number of beings on our planet? Well, which planet Earth, but to say that on the planet Earth that we're communicating on right now, are there a percentage that are not a result of the hybridization that the Anunnaki created?
Are you asking if you have visitors from elsewhere?
Well, since the Mayan were here and they were living here, no one would have known that they were another species of human, correct?
Yes.
So is the same thing true now? There are other species of humans that are here that were not a direct result of the Anunnakis?
There are, but we're not allowed to mention who they are. But they're not many.
Not many. Mostly everybody here at this point is
mostly
a descendant of that.
And of course, remember that the descendants of the original Mayab people have also mixed with actual humans. So there are very few original bloodlines that remain from the original Mayab people that arrived on your planet as an external species.
So as the descendants of program, what would you say is one of the most positive benefits we received from the inclusion of the Anunnaki genetics?
You'll find that out when you allow all of the different markers that have been shut down to reopen. You will start experiencing your reality in a very different way. One of the reasons why you explore space itself, in a sense, as a result of that.
That's nice to know there's positive things. Well, there's many positive things in a sense that came from all that. So,
yes, but it's still unfolding.
Yes. Okay, because we haven't really fully embraced that their genetic markers, or we haven't opened those markers yet. So
no, not fully.
Received the gifts that are there.
Yes. So exploring space, in some sense, is a result of that. The idea of the Sasquatch don't really focus that way. They explore other dimensions, but not in the way that you choose to explore space.
Is one of the ways we may access more of our genetic capabilities through our own exploration of genetic alteration and this whole area that's happening on our planet now, where
yes, of course.
So it's really a very positive thing, but it can be used either way.
Anything can be positive or negative depending upon how it is used, yes.
Yes, okay. Go on to some other areas. Does a person exist in all realities, or maybe we already covered this, that the unique me that I am in this reality, each version of me also has its own unique me that it's experiencing?
Well, no, of course not, because there are parallel realities that don't need a version of you.
Oh, I meant as far as a lot of times people are trying to grasp the idea that there are parallel versions of themselves, but it's not really them. It may be from an oversoul level, but it's not them from a personality or experiential level.
All right, well, look at it this way. You never assume if you have an identical twin that they are going to have the same experience that you do, even though there might be a lot of similarity.
Right.
So you might as well think of parallel reality versions as identical twins.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay.
They're having their own experience, no matter how much they may look like you physically.
Okay. Our science shows that space is expanding and that all the different galaxy clusters are drifting apart from each other over time. Yes. What is the spiritual reflective meaning of this, and does this have something to do with the splitting of the parallel realities?
Not so much the idea of the splitting of the parallel realities, but it has to do exactly with the word that you used. Expansion. It's about expanding. It's about growing. It's about experiencing from all the different possible points of view and perspectives and relationships that can be formed with a basic structure that never changes. So the very nature of existence is to be the structure that never changes, and at the same time to constantly and infinitely expand its experiences of the structure that never changes.
It's really something.
It is something. It is, in fact, many somethings.
How does the formula help us have clearer communication with our higher self and our spirit guides?
Well, when you act on your passion, you raise your vibration. When you raise your vibration, you become a better receiver or better antenna for higher frequency energy, and therefore communications from higher frequency realms, such as spirit guides and other dimensions, can be more clearly received in whatever way they need to be received, more often than not, through more synchronicity, more awareness of the synchronicity around you. But it makes you a more sensitive antenna to act on your passion, which is the primary idea of the formula.
And then sort of the idea that the permission slips that work for each person are something to be cherished and enjoyed because they help you move into the higher frequency states.
Yes, why not?
Right. So there's no specific permission slip to have clearer communication. It's all very unique and designed specifically for your consciousness and what you're attracted to.
Yes, if you want to call the formula a permission slip, you could say that that's permission slip 0. But in general, because that's really representative of the structure of existence. But all the permission slips beyond that are up to you.
Oh, I know someone asked this question about, is there like a 911 for spacecraft? Because we've heard that there's been spaceships that have crashed on Earth and everything.
Yes.
And it's kind of surprising that anything would crash like that. But
well, it depends upon the level of technology. You know, the universe still, no matter how advanced a being may be in your perspective, well, I'm just going to put it in the way that most humans put it. Shit happens. You can't necessarily cover everything. And therefore, there are some levels of technology that are susceptible to what you typically might call an accident. But of course, there are beings that also understand that there's no such thing as an accident. And that the beginning of your awareness, in some sense, in the modern age, of the existence of extraterrestrials happened because of a crash. So it serves a purpose, and in that sense isn't an accident. Yet at the same time, things happen.
So like the idea that of the 911 thing, what can you tell us about that? Is there...
Each civilization may have its own way of contacting others, and of course for us, we're telepathically bonded. So therefore, anything that might seem to be amiss is instantly understood by those that need to understand it.
Has a Sasani craft ever crashed?
On Earth, no. In our early experimentations with the idea of star travel, yes. But that was thousands of years ago.
Okay, so shifting over to sort of the human condition,
Yeah.
You know, we are made of love in that sense. We've been told
it's a euphemism. Yes, it's a euphemism, simply meaning the ultimate vibration of existence is what you translate as unconditional love.
So how is that possible that there's psychopaths and all kinds of very...
Because the love is unconditional. You can choose whatever limitations you wish to impose upon yourself to learn a certain thing, or you can allow yourself to simply fall under the auspices of the cycle of any given reality that may contain that probability. It's unconditional. That's what it means. You can experience any number of things, including not being aware that you are unconditionally loved and supported, which can lead to any number of negative kinds of experiences. But again, remember, you're ultimately indestructible. People may not know they have the ability to be expressing the idea of love in a certain loving way. They may be attempting to express the idea of connection and love, but they may never have been taught, because of the limitations of the reality, of how to do that in a positive way. So when they express themselves, all they've learned about how to connect is through negative methodologies. So it's about the imposition of a framework on the idea that you are able to experience anything depending upon the circumstances of any given location or situation, because you are supported and loved unconditionally. There's no fudging the idea of unconditional.
That really is the most amazing part of it, is that you choose. You have the ability to choose. You have free will in that sense.
That is why we say your greatest power is the freedom to choose.
Right, because you're so fully empowered, and yes, yet you can be on a planet that expresses great darkness.
Yes, absolutely. And when we say the freedom to choose, it doesn't mean that those choices are always conscious. Because if you've created a reality in which you have an unconscious mind, then some of your choices can come from beliefs you may not be aware of.
Oh, so that's a big key here, is the idea of the unconscious mind.
Yes.
That we compartmentalize levels of our consciousness to have a focused experience here.
Yes.
And part of our discovery process is to see what we harbor in our unconscious.
Yes. You have hidden things from yourself, so you have something to discover.
It's fascinating.
And it gives you a new perspective. And that's how creation grows. New perspectives.
So as part of that process, What is meant by learning to do more with less?
Well, when you really understand how simple the structure is, which is, again, what the formula is based on, it's just an instruction manual that has very few instructions. If you follow those few instructions very precisely, then you don't have to do anything else to allow the life to automatically work to your advantage. You will actually experience more that synchronicity can bring you when you are actually operating with less instructions, just the instructions that are necessary. So operating with less brings you more. Whereas if you clutter it up with extra instructions that aren't necessary, then you may be giving yourself more instructions to follow, which clutters everything up, which means you pay less attention to the things you can be getting and you experience less getting of them.
So that's really the beauty of the way our entire existence is structured. Everything is incredibly simple in terms of how to move about this experience. The simpler you keep it, the more the rest is taken care of by the other mechanisms that exist.
Yes, and sometimes we have to, depending on the civilization we're working with, we may have to create what seems to be a little bit more complexity in the sense of, well, let's take this idea and break it into two ideas because it's easier for that civilization to understand. So that's not really adding real complexity, it's just adding more explanation.
And when you're functioning at a very high level of consciousness, you feel the incredible level of support that the reality actually always presents to you. That's your natural state, to feel absolutely, completely supported, effortlessly existing.
And the higher the frequency, the more obvious that becomes, because you're seeing more of existence.
So when you work with something like the formula, you're getting right to the core simplistic pieces of information that allow you to have a supportive experience.
Yes. Because remember, you're always being supported, but it allows you to be aware of the fact that you're being supported. Because even when you experience negative things, you're being supported in that, because that's what you chose.
Right. So, well, we really appreciate all that you've shared with us about the formula and how to exist here and have a really fulfilling experience.
It is our passion and our pleasure to share this information with you, whether you use it or not.
Thank you. And just to let everybody know, our next broadcast will be next month, July 24th. And the title is Breaking News. And it's all about the new information that's being released during this first stages of open contact and disclosure. So we hope you'll join us for that. And thank you so much for all your sharing today. We love you a great deal and really appreciate all that you give us.
As we appreciate all of you very deeply. And now allow yourselves to move forward into your meditation. And now we invite you to allow yourselves to relax and let go of anything that is no longer relevant for this moment. For the focus right now is the here and now. And whatever images or sounds you wish to accompany our meditation to you, our gift to you, just let yourself breathe deeply and easily, and allow yourself to focus on the concept of the difference between the mechanism of simultaneity and the lens of space-time reality that distorts the simultaneous connections into ones that seem more linear, that shifts that arrow in a different direction to make it appear as if the same soul is having a different physical reality, one after the other.
So as you have seen that graphic that we provided, allow yourself in this meditation to simply go back and forth, seeing the little black arrows between the different physical beings that share these energy connections, seeing them switch to the bottom version and switch back to the simultaneous version. Back and forth. Click, 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 click. So that you can really begin to understand and experience the distortion that is caused by the physical reality space-time lens that allows you to see these arrows going back up into soul as if it's the same soul, having a different physical personality in linear fashion, as opposed to seeing it as different physical beings existing simultaneously that have an energy connection between them all at the same time. Click, 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 click. Go back and forth between the two versions. The simultaneous version, the physical reality space-time lens version. Click, click. Just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, so that you can begin to absorb within your being the arbitrary nature of the vision of space-time reality, and how it is, in a similar way to a glass lens, distorting the white light into the broken down spectrum of the different colors that make up your particular physical reality experience. Click, click, back and forth, a switch going up and down, click, click. Watch those little arrows move. Click, 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 click. And the more you do this for about 15 minutes of your time in a relaxed state, wrapping your mind and your consciousness around this idea of the difference between a description of an experience, the space-time distortion, or the actual mechanism, the simultaneous version, then you begin to more clearly and more effortlessly apply this ability to every situation and circumstance in physical reality, to start making them more transparent, to start seeing them more as the illusion, and to start being able to comprehend with your understanding of how things actually are in structure, to be able to comprehend in every situation the difference between the true underlying mechanism and a simple distorted description of a space-time lens filtration. Click, 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 click. The more you practice this, the more you will see the difference between the two and understand that the description of the experience is not necessarily the description of the underlying mechanism that's allowing it to happen. That is the true cause. Click, click, back and forth. Use that graphic. Shift your eyes up and down, click, 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 click. The true mechanism on top, the space-time distortion on the bottom. See those little black arrows moving like a switch. Click, 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 click. You don't have to do this for very long. 15 minutes will suffice, maybe even less, but it will begin to train you to see the difference between the space-time distortion and the true underlying mechanism. It will start to leak into different experiences in your life and even interactions with others, where sometimes the conversations may actually be talking about something other than what you think. You may start seeing certain conversations as nothing more than surface appearance and start really perceiving the underlying cause of why someone is saying what they're truly saying, to start seeing the true inner reasons for the way they may be behaving. Allow yourself to gain this transparency. Click, 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 click. This is a very powerful permission slip tool that can allow you to start seeing through the illusion of physical reality, not for the purpose of discounting the experience. No invalidation here is implied. The idea is to simply appreciate the difference the richness of how a physical experience can be created from a wholly unexpected underlying mechanism, and just allow yourself to experience the two of them side by side, or top and bottom. Click, 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 the little arrow clicking back and forth. Click, 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 click. Allow yourself to absorb this, to breathe it in, and to know that it can be of assistance in creating physical realities, experiences, to become a little bit more transparent so that you can truly perceive the underlying structure that never changes. So that you also begin to appreciate how, even though the structure never changes, there is a rich tapestry of experiences that can be laid upon it by creating these different perspectives with the space-time lens distortion. But at the same time knowing that that's how you're doing it, that this is the mechanism, the space-time distortion, the space-time filter, the space-time lens is creating these perceptions of the underlying structure, and therefore creating the rich complexity of the physical reality experience, but at the same time allowing you to be clearer about the simplicity of the underlying structure, which is at the heart of all experiences, no matter how complex they may seem, no matter how different they may seem. Click, 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 click. Allow yourself to continue to breathe this in and make it your own, and have fun playing with it. Click, 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 click. You may begin to find that in experiences that will now be synchronistically brought into your life, that even though you may not be saying it out loud, your little inner voice may be reminding you in every experience to go click, 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 click. What's the experience here? And what is the true underlying mechanism at the heart of it? What's the real cause behind what we're seeing on the surface? Look deeper into every soul, into every heart, into every mind, so that you can match the frequency and truly understand through compassion, through unconditional love, what a person is truly saying in their heart of hearts, in the deepest recesses of their beliefs, and deep within their soul and spirit, and see through anything that might prevent you from knowing them, deeply knowing them, and also gaining insight into the reflections of your own being. Click, 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 click. This isn't just about the idea of reincarnation or simultaneous incarnations. It's about the idea of gaining more transparency and knowing the difference between the illusion and the cause. Click, 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 click. And in all of this, know thyself. Click, click within yourself as well, so that you can discern the difference between the things you have been taught that may be more illusionary and the things that you now have the ability to know that may truly come from the core of the structure of existence itself. Click, 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 click. Breathe it in and make it your own. We thank you for allowing us to share these ideas with you this day of your time. Emerge at whatever pace you are comfortable with, and know that, as always, you have our unconditional support and our unconditional love and our unconditional and deep appreciation for the variety that you represent of more ways that all that is has of expressing itself within its own existence, that enriches and informs all other existences within it, all other experiences within it, all parallel realities within it, not only for you, but for all of us. And we thank you for your gift and your willingness to be more of who you truly are. Be at peace and welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Sweet dreams.